In this lecture, we will be assembling the frame for our car and connecting all the electronic components. Without further ado, let's get started. Here are the objectives for this lesson. By successfully completing this lecture, we will have mastered the following items. We will understand how to assemble the frame of our car, and we will also understand how the Bluetooth module, the Arduino, the motor driver, and the motors are all connected together to make our project work. If you are ready to begin, let's get this project started. Here are the parts we will need: an Arduino Uno, a USB cable, a breadboard, a car kit, which consists of 2 motors and the related gear assemblies, the chassis for the car, wheels and screws, a 4 AA battery holder, a 9-volt battery holder, 4 AA batteries, a 9-volt battery, a motor driver with an H-bridge to control 2 motors, an HC05 or HC06 Bluetooth module, and an Android phone. Now we're going to begin assembling the frame of our car. So just a couple of things before you get started. Make sure that your motor wires are connected. And again, temporarily we are just we have the wires connected here, but ideally these should be soldered on to be secure in place. And also you should put a 0.1 microfarad capacitor between the motor terminals to help make your circuit a little more stable. So this essentially is how it's going to be connected. So you're going to orient your base, the base of your car, like this. And the motor is going to go with the actual connecting wires on the inside. And there's a couple of pieces that we'll need. The first piece looks like this steel piece, and it has to, there are 2 pins on the base that actually has to go. If you see these 2 holes that are here, that steel piece goes like this, and it actually is screwed into the motor. So if you notice on the motor, there are a couple of holes here. You first put this piece on here, and then that is screwed in to that particular hole. So first I'll connect the metal piece to the motor assembly before we screw it in. So it goes into this first hole here. You'd want to make sure that the screw goes into this first hole. Right, so there it's securely in place. Let's do the same for the second motor. So again, here's the piece. Remember, the second motor is going to go here, and this is where the actual assembly is going to be connected. So I'll do the same. Get the screw. And remember, it's the smaller hole that we have to use. Alright, a good tip is not to push the screw in all the way, so you have a little play. That way you could line everything up correctly for the second screw, and then you can securely screw it in place. Alright, so now those are securely in place. Next, you're going to take what looks like a cardboard wheel, and you're going to place that on the inside of your motor. Okay, push that in. And this sort of acts as a counterbalance to distribute the weight, as the motor rotates. So, and that's really the purpose of this here. On the other end, similarly, you'll do the same. Alright, so you push that in. Next, we have to actually attach the motor to the frame itself. So I'll have to flip this over and show you how that's done. Alright, you'd want to make sure that those screw holes are lined up, and we can take a couple of these small screws and screw that in. Alright, so here's the first screw. Alright, that's securely in place. And here's the second screw. So a tip when you're putting in the screws, don't put the first screw in all the way, just put it about halfway. That way you'll have a little plate to put in the second screw, and they can both go in. So now I can tighten them both up. Alright, so it's in place. Also, just be careful, with the screws. Depending on the kit that you got, they may not be of the best quality, so they can be stripped out easily. So just be careful when you're screwing it in. Alright, so that's our first motor securely in place on our assembly. Now for the second one, again, let's do the same. We're gonna kind of pull this a little bit towards the end. And we want to make sure again that those screw holes, this is where we're going to put in our two screws. So let's get those installed. Alright, so again, don't put it in all the way. That makes things go a little easier. And once we have them both, we can secure it in place. Alright, so there you go. Our motors are secure in place, and now let's attach the wheels. So essentially we're going to take a wheel, and we're going to make sure it's aligned on one side, and we can push the wheel in. Okay, and there's our first wheel, and here is the second wheel, and similarly on the other side. Just make sure it's aligned. Alright, so those are the wheels for our car. Two back wheels actually. Next comes the front wheel of our car. So you'll notice that there are 4 holes to the front of the frame, and they line up actually neatly with the 4 holes from the assembly. Actually, we have to orient it a little bit. There we go. So they all line up nicely, and we're going to use these small screws together with these small bolts to secure that in place. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Alright, so that's the first screw. I want to make sure it lines up. Here is the second one. So we want to make sure we just tighten those up as best as we could. All right, and there's our wheel. So now everything is securely in place. We have our motors firmly attached, our two wheels, back wheels, and our front wheel. So that completes the actual frame assembly, and now we can proceed to do the wiring of our circuit.